I was in Michigan yesterday, and I met Rodney and Debbie, who gave me this. Focus. Thanks a latte. And then look at this. Something to take with you on the Sunday drive home. I got a McDonald's and a Starbucks gift card. Ha! Well, thanks, Rodney and Debbie. That's awesome. Sunday drive home. The 10 Commandments give shape to love. We had today's Epiphany 4, fourth Sunday after Epiphany, which means that we heard from Paul at the end of Romans, where he says, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, and if there's any other commandments, they're summarized in this commandment: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Leviticus 19, which is the most quoted Old Testament verse in the New Testament, by the way. I only know the top 3. Leviticus 19, love your neighbor as yourself, that's number 1. Number 2, you want to play along? The Lord, let's see, the stone that the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. You know that? Psalm 118, verse 22. And then the third most quoted Old Testament verse in the New Testament is Psalm 110:1. The Lord said to my Lord, sit here at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool. Now it's kind of cheating because Jesus quotes them twice in the synoptics, so that makes 6 times. It just, because it triples it, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And anyway, that's just how it goes. So the point is that the most quoted Old Testament verse in the New Testament is love your neighbors yourself. Leviticus 19, which is quoted by Paul, love does no wrong to the neighbor, therefore love is the fulfilling of the law. So if you took the 10 Commandments, usually Carrie got me I'll have to show you guys this at home. Carrie got me a dehydrator so I can make my own jerky for Christmas, which is pretty cool. And I've done it, by the way. I've used it. I've dehydrated the meat, and it's pretty good. Now, the point is that if you took the 10 Commandments and you put it in my dehydrator, you would end up with 2 pieces of chewy commandments, and that is love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbors yourself. That's what Jesus says whenever the lawyer comes to him. The best place to see this is in Mark 12. The lawyer comes to Jesus and says, hey, what's the greatest commandment? And Jesus says, well, you should love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. 1. And the second is like it. You should love your neighbors yourself. On these 2 commandments hang all the law and the prophets. So you put the 10 commandments in the dehydrator and you come up with these 2 commands: love God and love your neighbor. And then if you leave them in the dehydrator and the commandments are shriveled up down to one word, the one word that you're left with is love. Love, says Paul, is the fulfilling of the law. It's great. It's just really great. So the 10 Commandments is love. Now, the danger that we face in our own day is that people would take the devil, let's just say the devil would take love and set it against the 10 Commandments. So that it's not love as the fulfillment of the 10 Commandments, but rather something very different and more like love stands against the 10 Commandments. And this is most clearly seen in the old trick that the guys in high school used to play. They'd say to the girlfriends, well, if you love me, wink, wink. If you loved me, we could go break the 6th commandment, commit adultery. If you love me, we can go and fornicate. Now, so that it sets love, this is just the example, it sets love against the commandments. It says, no, the commandments are too restrictive. Love is expansive, this sort of thing. Now, this happens everywhere. So we have a couple of years ago, we had all the arguments before the Supreme Court about if 2 dudes could get married to each other. And what was the argument is, how can you prohibit love? Well, so first of all, you're not prohibiting love. Can two dudes love each other? Yes. They're commanded to love each other. Love your neighbors yourself. It's what is called being a neighbor or being a friend, but that's not the kind of love it's talking about. For whatever reason, love means acting like you're married. The act of marriage. That's not. There's a difference between. You know what I'm talking about. Now, but so it's not really even love to begin with, but this is the tactic is to use love against the Ten Commandments. And then once you've set love against the Ten Commandments, and you said this kind of sin is actually loving, and keeping the commandments then becomes your definition of hate. Now watch, so the Ten Commandments and love are supposed to be, but when you separate it and say, what really matters is love, and that stands against the Ten Commandments, then if you're standing on the Ten Commandments, now you're a hater. And now that's just the tactic that's happened. And it happens especially with marriage and our life as man and woman and husband and wife and father and mother. It happens there, but it happens with money in the Seventh Commandment. It happens with life in the Fifth Commandment. So that you even get around here, like when in Colorado they're talking about the mercy killing, and you get this idea that it's loving to end someone's life when their life is defined by irretractable suffering, so that murder becomes an act of love. Now again, you've set love against the commandments. And this is why the accusation sticks that people who want to keep the commandments or think the Ten Commandments are good are considered to be haters, because the premise has already been set that love stands against the commandment. Now, we've rambled on this enough, but we want to press it a little bit further, because we want to say, no, look, if you want to know what love looks like, you look at the Ten Commandments. Love is not an abstraction. We have a commandment-shaped love, and the love according to each commandment is shaped differently. We've talked about this before, but it's important to think about that. The love that I have, for example, as a pastor towards the congregation, is a third commandment-shaped love. It means that I preach and I teach the scriptures in their clarity. And that looks different than the fourth commandment-shaped love, the love that I have for my kids as a dad. If I start taking the members of the congregation out to get new socks, that's odd. That's a father's shape. Well, maybe more a mom. I've actually never bought socks for my kids, but in fact, I cannot tell the difference between Daniel's socks and Isaac's socks. I can't tell the difference between any of their clothes. It all looks the same to me. Anyhow, that's a mom-shaped love. And if I just take a stranger to go and buy socks, that's also strange. That love takes on a particular shape according to the commandments and according to the vocation. The way that husbands and wives love each other is totally unique. That kind of love you do not have for anybody else. That's the exclusiveness of the sixth commandment. You shall not commit adultery. That the way that love looks for husband and wife toward each other is unique there. And the way that a worker and a boss love each other also looks different. Seventh commandment shaped love. So that love takes shape according to the commandments and according to our different vocations. The love of one man to another man or one woman to another man looks different than the love of husband and wife. That's one of the great dangers of this whole big love as an abstraction and love as an expression of sexuality, that all love is sexual love. It's a very perverse way of looking at love. That's only one form of love. You know, the Greeks had all these different words for love. You had phileo, which was brotherly love, agape, which is like just general word for love. And then you have, some people say that that's the word for divine love, but that is pushing it a little bit far. I mean, it almost is always the word that is used when the Bible talks about how God loves us, but it also just, like when Jesus says the men love the darkness more than the light, that's agape. That's not a divine love. It just means love. It's just basic word for love, agape. Phileo, the brotherly love. And then you have eros, which means intimate sexual love, that's unique for husband and wife. It ought to be according to the Ten Commandments. We just have one word, and it all is being absorbed into the eros, into the kind of erotic sense of love, so that if two guys love each other, well, that means that they have to act like they're married. No, this is two guys love each other, and that's what we used to call, in the good old days, like 10 years ago, friendship. I'm afraid that one of the dangers of marriage between men and women and women, one of the dangers from the approval of this is that you start to lose friendship. Like friendship, everything has to become erotic, and there's no place for like intimacy with men. That has to be, everything becomes suspect now, tainted in a way. That's maybe beside the point. And I can't actually remember what the point was. What were we talking about? Love. Oh yeah. So the love takes shape. Love shapes up not against the commandments, but for the commandments. Now, we want to have this very clear in our minds, because the accusation, the apologetics accusation, comes to the church and says, "Oh, the church is full of hate." How can the Christian hate anybody? But they will know, Jesus says, they will know you are Christians by your love for one another. Jesus says, love your enemies, bless those who persecute you, pray for those who hate you, do good to those who spitefully use you. God, this is love, not that we love God, but that He first loved us, so that we then ought to love one another. He who loves is of God. In fact, John says that God is, twice he says, God is love. How can it possibly be that the church hates, that the Christian hates? I mean, we could hate death and we could hate the devil, I suppose, but to look at another person and to hate them, it's a Christian impossibility. Now that it can exist, I'm not saying that it can't exist, but it's incongruous. How do you say that word? It doesn't fit. Because whenever we look at another person, we know at least 4 things about them that they might not even know about themselves. We know that, number one, they're created in God's image. We know that they're fallen, and so that image is lost, that they're sinners. We know that Jesus is their brother according to his incarnation, that he took on their own humanity, their flesh and blood, that Jesus died for them on the cross, and that they will be raised on the last day. Maybe that's 5 things. And this gives us this, and we know that they are not our enemy. We're not, again, authorized by Jesus to declare anybody our enemy. Ephesians 6 says our battle is not against flesh and blood. So we see the person who's just tripping over themselves to run to death and destruction, and we don't hate that person. There's even this way that we know here, Christian, we're not supposed to hate anybody. We're supposed to love, but our love is shaped like the 10 Commandments. But people say that, well, if you think that there's a right and a wrong, then that means you're being hateful. Well, that's just absurd. Or judgmental, like you're not supposed to judge what I love. But that is also absurd, because that's simply the basic act of humanity, is to judge what somebody loves. Like, for example, you come and say, look, Pastor, you can't judge what I love. I love the Patriots. And I say, what you love is wrong. Or, to use a less controversial example, let's just say you love... Well, I saw this news report about a guy who was licking somebody's doorbell. Did you hear about this nonsense? And it went on for like hours. In the middle of the night, some dude was just, and they had like one of those Ring video, and so they got a video, like 3 hours of this guy licking someone's doorbell. Now let's just say that, let's just say that you're having lunch with that guy, or whatever. He probably orders a smoothie, and he's sitting across the table from you, and he says, "Now, who do you think you are to judge me? I love licking doorbells." And who are you to sit there and tell me that I can't do what I love? And your answer to that guy is, I'm a human being. I'm a person who knows that some things are good to love and others are not. And licking doorbells in the middle of the night for 3 hours. Well, look at licking doorbells at any time of day for any length of time is wrong. It's weird. You could say to this dude there with his strawberry Slurpee, you can say to him that the thing that you love is wrong. Now, how can you say, now that's hate to judge what's, no, that is not hate. That just doesn't count. You can, with all the compassion and understanding that you can possibly muster, we have to be able to say that we have to be able to critique what we love, or what we want, or what we desire. If we can't come along and critique what we desire as good or bad, as helpful or unhelpful, as leading to life or leading to death, as increasing human flourishing or diminishing human flourishing, if we can't make that judgment, then we're just beasts. We're not humans anymore. We're just people of base instinct. It's like what Paul says when he says that their God is their belly. So your belly says, this is what I want. And we say, okay, nobody can judge what I want. Nobody can judge what I like. Nobody can stand and put their ancient morality over me, because my God is my belly, which is the most basic morality of all. It's pagan morality. So we want to let the commandments give shape to our love. Now, this means it's not an excuse to be rude or to be hypercritical or to be even judgmental in that way. We want to be as kind and compassionate and understanding as possible, but we want to know that there is a right and there is a wrong. And that the reason why right is because God said it and it blesses us. It leads to life. And the reason why wrong is because God forbade it and it leads to death. The end is destruction. It's good also for us to remember that our love for each other, according to vocation, and our love for God takes a certain shape. It's most especially good to remember that God's love for us also takes a particular shape. I mean, it takes the shape of Jesus on the cross. So that God does not only demand love of us, but He also gives love to us. Remember how this went? John says to Jesus says to Nicodemus, John chapter 3, that the Son of Man did not come into the world to condemn the world, but that the world might through him be saved. For God so loved the world that he gave. That's what love does. It gives love. God loved the world so that he gave his only begotten Son, that so whoever believes in him wouldn't perish, but have an unending life. The love of God is demonstrated, and this is while we're still sinners. Christ died for the ungodly, so that it's not, love does not only come to us as a demand. It does come to us as a demand of the law, but it comes also to us as the gift of the gospel. That God loves us very particularly, and the shape of his love for us is the suffering and death of Jesus. The shape of God's love for us is the forgiveness of sins. The shape of God's love for us is baptism, supper. The shape of God's love for us is the resurrection to life eternal. That's what the love looks like. And we rejoice in that. Love shaped like the commandments. Love shaped like the cross. That's law and gospel. Sunday drive home.
Hi, order when you're ready.
Could I have a large black coffee, please?
A large black coffee. Anything else for you?
No, that's all. I'm going to pay with a gift card. Thank you.
Wow.
Some keen but somewhat salty observer asks, Pastor Wolfmueller, how come on the Sunday drive home hyperlapses, cars are always passing you? Are you really driving that slow? Well, maybe I drive really fast, and then I put the hyperlapse backwards on the video. You think about that?